Demi Lovato and California Sober. This is Radical Self-Respect by Jared Mello. Thank you very much to everyone who's been liking, commenting, and subscribing. Please remember to like and comment, and subscribe if you like videos about radical self-respect. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I come up with more videos. So, Demi Lovato made a big splash in the recovery community recently by saying that she's California sober. And if you look up what California sober means in Urban Dictionary, it means clean from all drugs except for alcohol and weed. And it's like, okay. So let me explain first my personal philosophy. I don't care what works for people, as long as it works for them, as long as it helps them to be the happiest and healthiest versions of themselves, and helps them to meet their potential, whatever that may be for them. To me, I'm very individualistic in regards to what works for people. I don't try to push my beliefs onto others. As long as it works for them, that's what I care about. So, like, for me, I would never, for example, say I'm in recovery because once in a while I do drink. I do take kratom. And so those things, more so kratom than drinking. Like, drinking can certainly be negative, absolutely. And it makes people, decision-making can be very impulsive. They can make bad decisions, absolutely. So I do what works for me. My routine has helped a lot of my impulsivity and these other borderline type traits I used to have. And so it works. What I do works for me. But I would never call it clean. I wouldn't call it sober or recovery either. I just do what works for me, and I don't care about the labels. And I think that's what Demi Lovato was trying to say too, where she goes, I don't want people to look up to me and emulate what I'm doing, because it may not work for them. What works for me might not work for them. So I don't want to endanger their recovery. Now, the only issue I think I have with it is that she's calling herself in recovery, I guess, because that is an extremely slippery slope. If she really wants to drink and smoke weed, to me what she should say is, I do what works for me. I wouldn't call this recovery. I just live in a way that I think is appropriate for myself. And that's it. Don't call it recovery. Don't call it sober. Just own what you're doing and say, hey, I still try to improve in other ways, but I'm not living the traditional abstinent-based model of recovery. But I think when people try to conflate things and say, oh, okay, I'm sober or I'm recovering, but I'm also drinking and I'm also smoking weed, yeah, it's going to cause some resentments. So here's the thing. NA, for example, they have tenets. And abstinence from all mind and mood-altering substances in NA is what they strive for. And to me, if someone does a mind and mood-altering substance, weed and alcohol included, it's like they're no longer clean. Bottom line. Same if someone does even like medicinal things like mushrooms or some other psychiatric experience or psychedelic experience, excuse me. Like, that's all using something. And so technically it's not clean to me. But being clean is no longer the metric in which I live by. I live by what works for me. And I try to be the happiest and healthiest version of myself in mind, body, spirit, and emotions. Right? I try to do what's going to work best for me, because at the end of the day, I'm the one who has to live in my skin. I'm the one that has to look myself in the mirror every day. So I won't say I'm recovery. No, I don't say that. I don't say I'm clean. I don't say I'm sober. But I do try to better myself. I do try to improve. And I think that's what Demi Lovato wanted to do too. But where she gets herself in trouble is when they'll call it California sober, or oh, I'm still in recovery. It's like, no, don't say that as much as I'm doing what works for me. Like, yeah, there are some people that used to do hard drugs like crack, crystal meth, heroin, Oxycontin, whatever, and then they go back to smoking weed and drinking, and that works for them. It's an improvement. I'm all for what helps someone improve, even if they're small steps forward. That's why I don't have a problem with MAT, medically assisted treatment. If it's a step forward and it's helping you improve your life, I won't talk smack about it. In fact, I won't talk smack about anyone and what they're doing, really. The only time it gets people in trouble is when, like Demi Lovato is saying, I'm in recovery and I'm California sober. if she's not careful, people could take a look at that and say, oh, well, Demi Lovato's doing it. Maybe I'll try to do it. And they might not have the same results that she's having. And it could really be a slippery slope for them. And they can go relapse on their drugs of choice and OD and die. That's why Demi Lovato probably shouldn't have shared that part of her story, honestly, because it could hurt people. Or at least just say, I'm not in recovery, but I drink and smoke because I feel like I can handle that. And I feel like it doesn't hurt my life too badly. Is she right? Is she wrong? That's not really for us to decide. That's up for her to decide. What she's going to do in her own life, that's on her. And what I do in my own life is on me. And what anyone who is watching this is doing in their own lives is on them. Like when we judge someone else's side of the street and how they're living, it doesn't really do us much good. The only time I make an exception to that rule is when what other people is doing is hurting people. Now, and again, and that's why we have to be careful with our speech. We have to be careful with how we word things. So I do what I do, but I won't say I'm in recovery. I won't say I'm clean, and I won't say I'm sober. And I do that very purposefully because I don't want to hurt people. I'm very honest about what I'm doing. And Demi Lovato was very honest about what she's doing too. So I give her credit for her honesty. I just do think she should leave the recovery or the California sober labels. She should not use them. She should say, this is what I'm doing. I wouldn't call this recovery. I wouldn't call this being sober or clean, but it's what I'm doing. And for now, it's working for me. I think if she would have said that, there wouldn't have been as much backlash. And again, people can judge that all they want, but it's her life. Who are we to judge what she's doing if it's her life, right? And again, I understand the only time it crosses the line is when they use those words recovery, clean, sober. They mean certain things, right? So if someone's drinking, that's not clean. If someone's smoking weed, that's also not clean. But it doesn't mean that they can't be living a good life. It doesn't mean they can't be being a happy and healthy version of themselves. Again, it depends a lot on the metrics that we find valuable. I don't find a clean metric valuable for me. For someone else, though, that's their ideal. To be clean is their ideal. And their clean time and how long they have is extremely important to them. And I say, yeah, it's great. Live what works best for you. I'll live what works best for me. And Demi Lovato will live what works best for her. And again, I'm all about what helps people become the best version of themselves, whatever that is. And as long as they're not hurting people, I'm all for it. But when everyone tries to fix, manage, and control others and say, I don't think you should be doing that, I don't think you should be doing this, that gets people in trouble. Another way I see people get in trouble a lot is when they try to do the work for someone else. And they forget, no one can help anyone else unless that person wants to help themselves. That's it. So those are my thoughts on Demi Lovato and her California sober capade in her interview there. So yeah, I'm good. If that works for her, that's great. I just wouldn't call it clean or recovery or California sober. I would just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. It's working for me right now. I'm not someone to emulate in this way because it might not work for you. And to her credit, she did say that to a point. So that's my video. Please let me know below what you think about this video. And thank you very much for watching.